It's time now for Carter's Corner. Everything Bay Area sports on the Northern California Sports and Entertainment Network. Here is your host, Carter Kim.
Oh, technical difficulties. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the show. I am Carter Kim. As the intro just said, I'm a Giants fan. I'm a Warriors fan. I'm a Niners fan. Bay Area Sports is all here at Northern Lights Entertainment. Well, we won. The San Francisco Giants yesterday smoked the Baltimore Orioles, and somehow, I don't know how, it seemed impossible, but we did. It's impressive. Some days, really bad teams can beat really good teams, ladies and gentlemen, and I think that was one of those days. So yeah, I'm probably going to bring up those stats in a minute. But yeah, that was a really good day. The offense just clicked. Grant McCray was really good. Tyler Fitzgerald had a bit of a rough start coming back after his back issue. It's good to have him back, though. Elliot Ramos managed to hit a crazy shot off of Craig Kimbrell. See, that is the thing. The reason why we played so well, in my opinion, was mostly due to the fact that Craig Kimbrell was horrifically bad, if I'm being totally honest. And that's not because – well, no, he's a bad player. He's not as good as he used to be when he was in Atlanta and in Los Angeles and a couple other teams. He's just not good, ladies and gentlemen. He's just not good. He's a pretty bad player now. And yeah, allow me to bring up those stats, and I think that would be the perfect thing to do. So we do that, then I think I can better emphasize it. But yeah, let me just share the screen. All right, there we go. Is it working? Yeah, there you go. I mean, let's just take a look. Mike Yastrzemski, hey, he's still playing well. He's an old man, but as he said last night, we're trying to play spoiler for a lot of teams. He had a home run, 2 hits, and 2 RBIs. Tyler Fitzgerald, rough start coming back. I can understand that because he had a back issue, and he's going to be a little rusty considering all those things. Lamont Wade Jr. had a good night coming home to his hometown in Baltimore. He played very well. Elliot Ramos had a bit of a late hit versus Craig Kimbrell. Michael Conforto somehow got a hit. I don't know how that's possible. A miracle has happened. The sky is falling. Cats and dogs living together. Mass hysteria. So, yeah, we somehow did that. But let's also look at Patrick Bailey, who scored a run. He played pretty well, except for those 3 strikeouts. But, hey, some people just have bad days. Grant McCray, on the other hand, I say he was the best player from last night. 2 hits, 3 runs scored, and 2 walks. Donovan Walton somehow had a good game. He also got a couple walks. Brett Wisely, hey, he didn't score anything or get a hit, but he had 2 sac flies that were crucial to the win. And on the other side of it, we managed to best Albert Suarez and a lot of Baltimore's pitching staff. But speaking of pitching, Blake Snell had an absolutely fantastic game. 1 hit allowed, 2 walks allowed, 12 Ks. An absolutely world-class performance from Blake Snell. I mean, hey, that's why they pay him money. He's an absolutely great player, and I'm hoping that we can re-sign him. But I will say, one of the reasons why we were able to win so hard last night wasn't because of, Baltimore playing particularly badly. Keegan Aiken, Smith, and a couple other guys. Suarez had a bad day, but he didn't even play horribly. If they had locked down that top of the ninth, they might have been able to have a chance to beat us. But the real loss should fall on Craig Kimbrell because he played badly. Those are some horrible numbers for a reliever who's supposed to play well, especially considering they're paying him like $12 million to pitch for them this year. He allowed 6 runs, 2 walks, got struck out 2 batters, but didn't do anything after that. But yeah, but the Orioles are going to the playoffs and we're not, so that just tells you something right there. Anyway, I'll stop sharing for now. I mean, what are the Giants trying to do? we're trying to get reps for the young guys. We're trying to give some opportunity to people like, Luciano, even though they're not doing that because I think that management's dumb for that. I think that Bob Melvin is, I don't know what to think of Bob. I think that a lot of it has to do with Farhan Zaidi being a meddling person, but I definitely don't think that I need to see him actually work without Farhan, and maybe we'll see how that goes. But most likely, if Farhan does get fired this winter, which seems more than likely than not, we will see him. We will see him go too. But yeah, not in other news, but in Giants news, part of Giants news, Scott Boras actually said that in a report from the San Francisco Chronicle that he was working with Farhan at his bedside at the hospital as Kyle McKiernan came in and told us that Farhan has been having health issues. It's interesting to know. I honestly don't think Scott Boras actually worked with Farhan Zaidi that much. This is speculation on my part, obviously, but it's very clear from what he's saying is that he was working with Buster to a certain degree. He's saying, oh, I hammered out the details with Farhan. Well, Farhan couldn't close, but Buster Posey did close, according to many sources. And it seems to me that Buster is going to be taking over a bigger job as head of baseball operations. And I'm hoping that that's the case because Buster's a really good guy for that type of thing, considering he was a player and now he's an owner here in the organization. It'll be interesting to know whether or not he can be that guy in the team. But yeah, we shall see how all this goes. And well, yeah, I still have those articles up. I don't think I'll read them right now to you because then I'll just kind of be rehashing everything, I guess. But later today, the San Francisco Giants play the Orioles again. We play against Dean Kremer, and we're facing a bit of the weaker half of Baltimore's rotation. We have 8 lifetime bats against Dean Kremer, and I don't know if we did that well. But in the lineup, we have Yastrzemski, Wade, Ramos, Conforto, Fitzgerald, Grant McCray, Casey Schmidt, Donovan Walton, and Kirk Casale. Donovan, I don't know why the hell Casey Schmidt's back up here, man. I really don't. That guy was swinging like Javi Baez at the plate every single time, and I do not trust him to be a guy that can hit on this lineup. But besides that, we'll see how everything else goes. But I think this is just a time of the year when we got to give younger people a shot at this. In breaking news in the minor leagues, Bryce Eldridge is currently playing right now with the River Cats. I think it's at the Sutter Health Field. I'm going to check actually and see how they're doing. They have lost actually to the Astros minor league team. Bryce Eldridge had 2 hits, a run scored, and a walk. So he's getting his reps down there, and we're hoping that next year or the year after that, he can come up and make a massive impact on this team because we definitely need him to be a big leaguer for this team because I don't know what we're going to do without him or without a superstar because right now, hey, Morcatna, how you doing, man? It's good to see you. Oh, my gosh. We really are looking way up at some of the best teams in this division. And we're going to have to rely on development and prospects and trying to figure things out. But in the meantime, we're hoping for Eric's lofty aspirations of getting Juan Soto, maybe Vladimir Guerrero Jr. Again, I don't know how realistic that is, but it's certainly possible because, well, a lot of really good players have played for a lot of bad teams, and I'm hoping that that could be the case for us. Sorry. But yeah, you know what? Let me just bring up the thing on the screen. Just give me a second. Yeah, why not? Well, we're playing the Baltimore Orioles. They have Dean Kremer on the mound, and we have Hayden Birdsong. Birdsong showed a bit of a bounce back in his last start. He played very well. I'm hoping he can continue to do that. They'll have Gunnar Henderson, Cedric Mullins, Anthony Santander, Hayden Kierstad, Colton Cowser, Ryan Ahern, Rivera, Holiday, and McCann playing for them today. I'm hoping that we can best that because of all the players on that team. I'm most afraid of Gunnar Henderson. I think we can, if we can take care of him early, we can do well. Besides that, I think that Hayden will do an okay job as the pitcher after his bounce back a couple of days ago. I think he'll continue to do well. I don't see a reason why he can't. He'll be at Camden Yards. Obviously, we have a couple of people on the injured list. But hey, the Baltimore Orioles are going to the playoffs, and we're not. So, as Mike Yastrzemski said, we're just really trying to play spoiler for a lot of teams, and we're trying to upset teams. We're trying to make sure that they can't go to the playoffs or they can't succeed as much as they'd like to. But we shall see how that goes. Let's see if there's any other news. Well, as far as I'm concerned, I think that last night's performance by Blake Snell is proof why we need to pay him as soon as possible. And if we can get his contract done before the year is over, or even like before free agency hits, then that would be huge because Scott Boras is definitely showing that he's not trying to be too aggressive with how he moves his free agents around. And that's kind of interesting to me. I think it's showing that he's trying to turn over a new leaf as an agent, possibly. Maybe that's the case, maybe not. But hey, things change with guys like Scott Boras after making mistakes, and they realize that they need to, I think they need to adapt their philosophy to nowadays their new climate of team play over our individual players. And especially with a lot of his really good players going into the offseason opted out, especially Juan Soto, who's going to be the biggest name on the market, along with Peter Alonso and a dozen or so other free agents in the MLB. We shall see how Scott Boras' clients do, but if Scott does what he did last year with Jordan Montgomery and Blake Snell, then it may just be a big problem again. But we shall see. We shall see. But, 12K is 2 walks and only 1 hit allowed for Blake Snell. He played absolutely fantastic baseball, and he's showing to me why this team could really use a Blake Snell on their roster for the next few years. He'd be a fantastic mentor to a guy like Kyle, him and Robbie Ray, but we will have to see because this is, again, not a season that we're trying to make the playoffs because it's very clear. We knew it when we lost to the Braves a couple months ago or a couple weeks ago that we weren't going to make the playoffs. And it was pretty clear to us at that point that we weren't a good team. Even before that, we realized we really weren't a great team. We just were hoping that we could iron out the cracks or iron out the wrinkles in this team, but that didn't end up being the case. And, well, we may just have to deal with the notion that this could have been a more interesting year than it was. But, hey, next year, Jung-Hoo Lee is going to be back. We're going to have a longer year for Tyler Fitzgerald and Elliot Ramos. It'll be interesting to see if we get a really good free agent in the offseason like Juan Soto or maybe somebody else interesting. I don't think that this team can do anything about first base because it's very simple. If we get a really good first baseman like Vladimir Guerrero Jr. or like Peter Alonso, the problem is going to be that that person will be blocking Bryce Eldridge, and we don't want Bryce Eldridge to be blocked. I know he can also play outfield a certain amount of time, especially a corner outfield spot, but I really wouldn't want that for Bryce Eldridge. I want him to probably play first base and try and be involved in the infield. He could be a leader in the infield, and he could really show in his young age, even at like 19, I can be a guy who can lead this team, and I can show the world what we can be. But yeah, I wrote all this down, and I was trying to see what the lineup might look like. Jung-Hoo Lee leading off, Tyler Fitzgerald in the 2-hole, with Elliot Ramos batting third, Juan Soto in the cleanup spot, and maybe even Bryce Eldridge next year. It depends on how Bryce Eldridge continues to do in AAA this year. And I think he will get a call up to spring training. And if he plays well this spring training, he will maybe possibly even take a shot at maybe becoming a big leaguer as soon as next year. But I don't think that's going to be the first thing they do. Knowing how the Giants are, they're going to let him marinate and try and be ready. I think they might just put him back in AAA, let him keep working. And if he shows a lot of promise in that year, Who knows? Maybe he'll be called up during the early months of the year, but it's going to be interesting to see the future of the Giants. But it'll all depend on how this next free agency goes, because if we can get a franchise centerpiece like Juan Soto onto this team, he really could be the best in the world. I think Juan Soto, because Juan Soto would finally be able to have the keys to the kingdom. He would be the best player on this team. He'd be able to play the Dodgers every other week. And we know what he's like when he plays the Dodgers. I'm always going to remember how he played as when he was playing for the Nationals versus the Dodgers in the NLDS. And it will definitely be an interesting future for the Giants. And if Farhan Zaidi is gone, that is, because I don't want that guy here screwing up prospect development or causing chaos for the team. But again, we shall see. We'll have to see about the rest of this roster too. I mean, I look at the schedule, I look at the roster of this team, I see potential, but there's just such little continuity that makes it good enough in order to be able to try and take a shot at the big time. I mean, I think the great thing about Grant McCray that he's shown is that even if we don't get a guy like Juan Soto this offseason, at least we have a semblance of something interesting in the outfield. I mean, imagine Grant McCray, Jung-Hoo Lee, and Elliot Ramos in the outfield. I like that notion a lot because that could be very interesting. All three of those guys could play very well, especially Jung-Hoo Lee. We already know what Ramos can be, and we all know how well he can play. It's just about trying to figure out how we stack up this lineup next year if we look good. As for starting pitching, I think I've agreed multiple times with the people who we've talked about this with that we need starting pitching. We need more starting pitching because last year was a clear show of why the start of this year will Pavs just Grand Admiral Shannon Pavs said that Fitz will be a second base next year. That's interesting because that could leave room for a guy like Willie Adames in the offseason, and I'd really like to see that. But yeah, looking at how this team is going, I mean, this could be very interesting. What do you think of Robbie Ray next year? I do think that with the injury that he started the year, that injury that he started the year with, I think it was the big reason why a lot of the time in the first half we were so mediocre because we were spending way too much time on bullpen games, and that became such an issue. I think Robbie will be better next year because he's shown after really bad years he can have really good years, especially in Toronto, for example, when the Diamondbacks sold him to the Toronto Blue Jays and he played much better. I think that he's great. We'll have to see. Northern California Sports and Entertainment says, "Hey Carter, Glenn here. You are correct about the 2025 outfield. That will allow them to play small ball and increase their run production." Yeah, I agree. I think that once we start putting people in, it'll be interesting. Grand Animal Shanahan says, "I would trade Robbie Ray for actually catching depth, and again go spend money on Jack Flaherty or Montas's pitching depth." Flaherty is very interesting to me. The biggest problem with Flaherty, though, is that he is from Los Angeles. He grew up there, and that's going to be a problem because I think once he's gotten his taste of playing in Los Angeles at the Ravine, I think that he's not going to want to leave. Montas, though, I really like that notion. I think Montas is a really good pitcher, and I think he would be a great guy to go get. But yeah. I agree, Ryan. Burns would be a decent pick if the price is right. I think so. I think that Corbin Burns, it's just a really interesting notion because the Orioles finally have ownership that's going to start spending money again. And I'm worried that they're going to definitely offer something really good to Corbin Burns. And if we were going to try and get Corbin Burns, he would be asking for a lot. He's also a Boris client. So that's going to be another big payment that he would have to get. I think that he would be a really good guy to get. It's just it's just going to be, does he want to leave the Orioles? Because if he becomes like a guy on the if the Orioles offer him a lot of money, I think he's doing the mental calculus in his head, like, I'm going to be getting a lot of run support. I'm going to be getting a lot of people to help me. And I think that with those two things, I can have like defensive support with guys like Henderson and a couple other people, even though Henderson's a bit of an iffy defender. I have a good outfield with Santander, Mullins, and others. It's just very tough to say how all that would go. Ryan says, I think Burns has a lower top end than Snell, but is more consistent. Personally, I'd keep Snell if we can't add another starter in free agency. I would agree with that. It's just going to be, again, I think everybody has said this about Blake Snell. He could go to a better team, be paid more money, and be in a position to win. And I don't know why he would turn that down unless it was a really good deal that we offered him and the notion of trying to compete if Farhan Zaidi is gone. But again, it's a very interesting thing. Flaherty would be a steal. I agree. Flaherty would be a massive, like, he's not an ace, Jack Flaherty, but he's not an ace, but he's a really good pitcher, and a lot of people need him. He's shown on the Cardinals, the Tigers, and the Dodgers why he can be a really good pitcher. But as I said before, he's from Los Angeles, and I think once he gets that little taste of playing for his hometown team, it's going to be very difficult. Grand Admiral Shanahan says, Shane Bieber, I know I'm a broken record, but if they can fix multiple older, lesser guys like Ray and Cobb and Gosman, Tyler Anderson, then they definitely can help fix Bieber who's in his prime. I agree. I mean, Bieber's 29 years old. He would be a really good ad because I really do think Shane Bieber, once he's on his form, is really good. I mean, the 2020 season, you can like mock for all of its BS, but he did have a really good season there. And he's shown in other years after that why he can be an ace for a team. And I do think that if we went to go get Shane Bieber, it would be worth a shot. And plus, since he's hitting the market, we could definitely say, hey, as you're rehabbing, we'll give you this bigger contract. The problem is, though, it would be an interesting deal because if we were going to give him a prove it deal, then we don't want to go back to the Farhan thing. But if we were going to give him a deal, it would have to be like 3 years without any opt-outs. But yeah. Ryan Murray says, the thing is, I really do think we need an ace if we want to compete in a no offense to all. The thing is, I really do think we need an ace if we want to compete and no offense to all. The Logan Webb stands, no offense. Sorry. To all the Logan Webb stands, but he's a number 2 and a great number 2, but certainly a number 2. In my opinion, Snell has a lower ERA right now. That's not incorrect. I do think Logan has been a workhorse for us, but he's not what you would want in the current state of MLB pitching. You want guys who have swing and miss. You want guys who are able to attack the zone and get people to miss and be able to deceive people. Logan Webb is a sinker baller, kind of like Framber Valdez, because like looking over at Houston's rotation right now, they have Ronel Blanco, Yusei Kikuchi, and Framber, along with like a couple young guys like Arrighetti and Hunter Brown. Those guys are really, really good. It's just the problem is with Framber. He does give up a lot of contact. He's one of those guys that's like very difficult to he has pitched no hitters before, and he's got some really good stuff, and he pitches very well. The problem with him and Logan is that they do give up a lot of contact, and when that happens, if the offense can start building on him, then there can be issues. But I do think Logan Webb, like you said, is sort of like Matt Cain. He's not as good as Lincecum or Madison Bumgarner, but he is good. And as Grand Admiral Shanahan says, he's a Robin, not a Batman. And I do think that Snell leaving is more likely than not, if I'm being totally honest. As I said, it's like, why wouldn't he leave? Because he has if he left, he would probably be paid more money on a better team that wants to compete. So he gets all of those things, and he gets to leave here, especially after a disastrous start to the season. But yeah. Wisdom Hunt, 5 innings pitched, 6 Ks, and 1 earned run. That I saw that. That was really good. I think that if you can just have one earned run, you can be really good. It's just he's had a bit of a rough season. He's had injuries. He's also had some bad games, but I think he can be better than what he is right now. Carson Whisenhunt. To get back to one of more Katniss comments, he said, "My very ridiculous wish list: Burns, Fried, Ademis, Vladdy, and Soto." See, the thing is, the problem with one of those is about Vladdy. If Bryce Eldridge ends up coming up, then it's going to be an issue because Vladdy plays first base, and his secondary position, third base, is being taken over by Matt Chapman. And I'm not sure they're going to want to do that because Vladdy, being a first baseman, a Gold Glove first baseman, it would create a bit of continuity issues, and I'm not sure if that's going to happen. Fried and Burns would be really good. That's another one. Fried would be a really good signing, I think. And since Pavs, as reported by Grand Admiral Shanahan, if Fitz is playing second base, Ademis would be a really good signing. But we'll have to see because it's going to be interesting to see if we can, if we can create a solid like fielding and position lineup that can like support our pitchers. And it's going to have to do with getting all of our everything in order to make sure that we need to know, who's going to play first base to start the year. Is it going to be a platoon or is it going to be Eldridge immediately? Since we already know that Fitz is going to play second base, that will be interesting. That means what's going to happen at shortstop? Well, we'll probably go to free agency for that. Third base is secure with Chapman. Ramos has secured the outfield with Jung-Hoo Lee. It's all going to be about that last spot. And if it's going to be Soto or if Grant McCray is going to be like our left-handed bat there. Ryan Meridian says again, if we don't get any free agency pitcher and Snell leaves, I'm hoping that Birdsong keeps progressing. He has ace potential if we can get some movement on his fastball, which is 98. I think Birdsong's stuff does look good. I'm not sure if he's going to be an ace. I think that he shows a lot of potential. I think next year, if he plays super well, as he gets more playing time in the big leagues, he can show a lot. If he can show that potential, I think we could think, oh yeah, maybe he could be the ace for this team. But I do think that his fastball is really good. He's just got to find more control of his fastball. And he's also got to find the moments when he can throw his other pitches like his curveball and his changeup and his slider. He's just got to figure that out. But again, he's 22 years old. Him and Kyle, I trust them to get better than what they are right now. And yeah, I think they'll figure it out. It's just, I think next year we need to temper our expectations as Giants fans and say, you know what? Next year is going to be a sort of a season where we're going to try and figure it out. And if we do really well, we're playing with house money. But Grand Admiral Shanahan says 4 homegrown starting pitchers: Webb, Harrison, Birdsong, Whisenhunt. Innings eaters: Beck, Black, Roop, Wynn. Hicks experiment is silly. LOL, Yaz's leadoff home run. That it is funny how Yaz hit a leadoff home run, even though we give him a lot of criticism. Yaz has been playing well lately, but I'm still very skeptical with how he's been doing. I do like the notion of having Landon Root play as an innings eater. I think that he could be a really good player there. I've watched him so far. He had some dominating curveballs versus the Padres, and I thought he did a pretty good job. Wynn, I'm hoping that he does better because during his like stretch where he had injuries and other stuff like that, he was kind of he kind of looked bad after he had his forearm issue, and then he obviously had the elbow surgery, which really hurt him. But Black and Beck look good. I think Beck is an interesting player. He could do well as well. I think that Black is okay. We'll have to see. And I do think that the Hicks experiment is iffy. He did start out very well as a starting pitcher, but he would have to do much better in order for him to keep his spot as a starting pitcher. But I do think that the 4 homegrown starting pitchers of Webb, Harrison, Birdsong, and Whisenhunt look interesting. I think Whisenhunt could be really good. I think that we'll have to see how his spring goes because he's going to get an invite to spring training like Eldridge, and we'll see how that goes. But I think he's doing a good job, and he'll figure that out eventually. Ryan Meridian says, I don't think he's going to be an X year, just long term. He has the upside of what we thought Harrison had, in my opinion. Let's see how he does today. It'll be a good test. Yeah, I agree. I think going up against the Orioles is a massive test for any pitcher in general. I mean, Garrett Cole has struggles with the Orioles. I mean, it's not bad to be beat by the Orioles. You're expected to be beat by the Orioles, but the best pitchers will beat or do a really good job versus the Orioles. And if Hayden does a good job, I think that we can say, that next year he should be able to come back and do well. I think that he's a really good player, Hayden Birdsong. He's just got to figure it out. I think Kyle is super hated on, though. He's good. He's just looked gassed at the end of the season. I don't disagree. It's his first full year as a big leaguer. It's just when he came up at first, his velocity was at like 95, 97, 98 sometimes. And then ever since then, it's been like a very low 90s. He's just been very, very iffy in a lot of ways. I do think that he's a good player. He's just he's a good player. He's just been a little shaky, and he needs to figure out a lot of his pitches. I mean, I'm hoping he can have he can do what Jose Barrios does with his slurve and kind of tunnel it right, and then he can like create deception against other hitters. If he can do that as a southpaw against righties and lefties, he can really be a good pitcher. It's just about trying to figure out if he can do that on a consistent basis, because I've seen what he can do against really good pitchers and really good hitters. It's just really trying to figure out if he can do that as a consistent guy, and I think he can be. Again, these are 22-year-old guys. These guys are barely older than I am. They can figure it out. They just have to be given time. And besides, this is happening under Farhan Zaidi. I'd like to see what happens once he's gone. But yeah, Grant Hannibal Shanahan says just have to somehow replace Snell's production in free agency this winter. I feel good about the pitching staff, but I have to account for Snell leaving. I agree. I mean, again, Snell, he has so many more better options than staying here. I have no reason to believe he'd opt in. He's a Boras client. I don't know why he would stay or opt in when he could go onto the market and do what he's always done, which is basically he had a horrible first half, but then the second half of the season, he's been absolutely dominant. He's going to take that and say, you know what? I should be given a chance to get a lot of money. And I'm hoping that some weird stuff happens and he wants to come back, because I think a lot of teams are a bit more skeptical of Boras clients now. But hey, but you're right. We have to account for the possibility of him leaving because he might not want to stay. Yeah. I'm just trying to think about other starting pitchers, because I do think Fried would be an interesting notion of trying to go get Max Fried. I think that he's a good pitcher. He's another southpaw that we could add to the staff. It's just interesting. His wife has a super West Coast bias for Snell. That's why he came here, and came here to begin. We're so lucky there. Yeah, that is the thing. I mean, I think that he is just not a guy who enjoys the East Coast. I mean, he left Tampa, and ever since then, he's been on every West Coast team. He's been with the Padres. He's been here with us. I do think that I don't know what other teams on the West Coast he'd want to go to. Again, the interesting thing is the Dodgers don't take Scott Boras clients anymore because they didn't like the Cody Bellinger situation. They didn't like negotiating with Boras. So they're just like, we're not going to do that anymore. So yeah, I don't think they're going to do that. I think it's going to be interesting. I don't think the Dodgers will sign him, Ryan, just to be totally clear. I do think that he would be a guy they would look at, but again, they don't like talking to Scott Boras clients. And as Grant Admiral Shanahan said, Seattle doesn't want to do business that's that big. Is Wilmer coming back, or will they eat his money? I think Wilmer is an interesting case, because I think Wilmer is a good enough player where they might like platoon him with Monty at first base or something like that. I don't know. It's going to be interesting because Wilmer is a good enough clubhouse leader, and he's a good enough player to a point where it's like, oh yeah, maybe we should keep him. I mean, let me just I'm going to bring up his stats really quick this year his stats were really bad, but the year before he had his best season of his career. I mean, hold on. Let me just bring this up on the screen. So Wilmer Flores' stats. This was his stats before this year in 2023. He had an 863 OPS and 873 and 137 OPS plus. He played well for the most part last year, the year before last year. This year, I think a reason why he's been kind of blah has been mostly due to the fact that he's been injured a lot of the time, and you really can't blame a guy for being injured. it'll be interesting. But I do think that Wilmer is probably just going to stay purely because he brings a clubhouse vibe that people like. And there's a lot of other Latinos in the clubhouse like him. I just don't see a reason why he would, you know, I just don't see a reason why they'd kick him out. I think he's a decent enough player and he's a platoon guy because, again, we're not going to go get a first baseman because Eldridge is getting ready to come up. So, yeah. But to get back to the Blake Snell thing, he said Ryan says he legitimately said the main reason why he came here was due to his wife and in his initial press conference. I'm not surprised at that. I mean, again, a lot of the reason why guys move around to certain places is because they want to make sure their family's happy and they want to make sure that they're not, uncomfortable with the situation that they're in. I think that Snell being in San Francisco is going to be interesting because I don't know. I'm just worried that as this time goes on, I'm going to think like, what if we made a mistake not selling him at the deadline? Again, that's due to Farhan being terrible too. But if we had sold him, imagine what we could have gotten back in return. I mean, the Orioles, the Yankees, or a lot of other teams would have been super willing to talk business about him. Boston would have totally been willing to talk to us about him. I'm thinking about like Minnesota or Houston as well. They would have been totally in on that. But it's definitely a situation where it's like they're definitely not gonna. Well, it really all kind of went wrong because we've collapsed in the second half of this season, and it's pretty clear that us keeping him and not selling at the deadline was a mistake. It's a Carlos Rodon situation all over again. Too bad that the Angels didn't have a shortstop or a second baseman that was a young star to trade for. They do have Zach Neto, and he's a decent player, but he's not. But the Angels said that they weren't going to trade him, and it would have been interesting. But yeah, the Angels are up there with like the A's and the White Sox for organizational incompetence and legendarily bad work as a team. Ron Washington can't save that team, and I definitely think Mike Trout might have a thought of like, oh yeah, maybe I should retire in the next 2 or 3 years. Because Trout's been so injured and so glass for like the past few years. It's like, it's just too bad. But to answer the whole shortstop second base thing, I think Neto would have been a guy that we could have talked about, but I'm not sure they would have done that because, again, Artie Moreno, the owner of the Angels, is just a stubborn guy who doesn't realize when he's beat, kind of like Farhan Zaidi, actually. It's just, yeah. Neto is cool. I just want to see a splash on the winter fronts. You and everybody else, Grand Admiral. I mean, I do think we need to try and do something crazy in free agency. It's going to be interesting. Oh, yeah, I forgot the Giants game is actually on when this is happening. Oh, that's what he meant. Well, that's what you guys meant earlier. Yaz hit another home run. Nice. Okay. That is pretty damn funny. I can't even. That is pretty damn funny. I can't even lie. Well, I mean, I like Hayden's changeup right now, Ryan. I think Hayden's changeup is really good. I think Patrick Bailey talked about his changeup and said, yo, if he throws it more, it's going to be really tough for like left-handed hitters to get after him and right-handed hitters for that matter. I mean, he's a really good player. I think that Hayden shows what he can be. I like Hayden a lot. He's got ace stuff. We'll just have to see on him. I agree. That's the biggest thing. He's a 22-year-old guy, and we'll have to see if he can develop, but he definitely has the stuff what it takes to be an ace. I mean, there's a lot of guys who have really good stuff to be an ace of a starting pitcher that don't achieve that. I'm hoping that's not the case with Hayden, but I do think that he has what it takes to be an ace because he's got the look of a pitcher. He's 6'4". He's got all sorts of great stuff. He's got great pitches. It's just about trying to figure out if he can do that consistently. Because he's shown, like in games versus the Rockies and a lot of other teams, that he can absolutely dominate. But then again, it's the Rockies. So, it's not like that's a very tough challenge. I mean, but yeah, Hayden shows a lot of promise as a player. We have to remember Logan Webb didn't break out until his 25-year-old season. Give him time, they can become good. Harrison and Bertson. I agree. I mean, the difference between baseball and other sports in terms of like prospect development and rookie development is that it can take longer than a lot of people expect. I mean, Seth Lugo has turned into an ace this year for the like he's turned into an all-star ace for the Kansas City Royals, and he's like 36. He's an old man, and he's actually and if you look at previous years of his work, you thought, oh no, he's like a third or fourth starter, but he's actually turned into an ace. Ryan Meridian says Judge didn't break out until 28. Exactly. These guys, it just takes a little time to figure it out. I mean, you know. Grand Admiral Shanahan, I'm drinking the Kool-Aid on sinker change culture. They want to get the ball on the ground ball culture, because look at the Dodgers pitching injuries. Foul Territory podcast went hard on modern day power pitching. Yeah, that is an interesting thought. I mean, I do think that sinker ballers are going to have a longer shelf life than a lot of other pitchers. I mean, look at Tyler Glasnow. He's overpowering people with his pitches. He's got a lot of great stuff, but the problem is he gets injured a lot. And just look at a lot of other pitchers. Like, one of the things that a lot of power pitchers are liable to do is give up home runs and big hits. Because one of the things that you can always give Logan a problem with, it's like that's one thing that I can say about Logan Webb that he doesn't have a problem with. He does have some moments where he gives up big hits, but for the most part, in all of the starts that I've watched this year, he's mostly been able to keep them to small ball and keep them on the base paths rather than hitting it over the fence. He is it's an interesting thing that they do. Sinker ballers, I really like how they do things. Framber Valdez, Logan Webb, obviously. There's a lot of other great sinker ballers out there, but let me just check, actually. Yeah, I mean, sorry, but I do think that when you look at these younger stars, especially how they're pitching, I said this once before. I love Paul Skeens. I think he can be one of the best pitchers in baseball. The problem is, like, he's throwing at such a high velocity and he's ripping it so hard. He's going to get hurt eventually, because what Logan does, I don't think that's what gives me like a bit more confidence about Logan. It's that he's not going to get injured often, because I mean, I'm not going to say this to jinx him or whatever, but he's a guy who's not going to get injured as often because he's not throwing with a lot of power. He's throwing with a little more finesse and trying to deceive hitters. Sorry. But yeah, very few young stars in baseball. Almost all of them end up being superstars also. Harper, Soto, Paul Skeens, Tatis, etc. I agree. I think that a lot of younger guys can become really good. It's just really about figuring it out. And a lot of these young guys sometimes crack under the pressure, but a lot of them, like the really good players that are at a young age and like come up and play super well, these guys all become superstars. I mean, Soto, Harper were all both 19. I don't know how old Tatis was when he came up, but I know Skeens is 22. But yeah. Grand Admiral Shanahan says, power pitchers are sexy, though. Nothing more fun than watching Skeens or a healthy Strider or Sale or shoving. Yeah, that is the thing. And those guys are really fun to watch because you watch them strike people out. I mean, everyone loves strikeouts. Let's keep it real. Everyone loves to watch like people who strike people out. It's just such a fun notion because, you know, because strikeouts are an important stat for pitchers, because you have a guy who gets out more people than he does not. I mean, when you have like a 200 strikeout guy, you're like, oh yeah, this guy's getting more people out than other people, and that's helpful to my team. It's just a problem because, you know, these guys are going to get more injured than often than not. I mean, again, look at Chris Sale's injury history. This year is a clear exception to that history. But yeah, I mean, and then you mentioned Strider. Strider's out for this year because he had his Tommy John surgery. And yeah, when you watch Skeens, you think, wow, this is awesome. Moji, hello. Ryan Meridian says, reminds me of Steven Strasburg, Paul Skeens. I agree. I think what Skeens does is very interesting. I just think when I watched Strasburg, he had some more interesting, like, this deception pitches. I remember watching him versus the Dodgers and the Astros. He had some just so many interesting things that he could do. he was a very cool pitcher. I think that poor Steven Strasburg's career ended way too soon. He was a really good pitcher, and it's just too bad. But I don't think it'll be the case for Skeens because of how careful we are with pitchers now, and we'll have to see. More cat and I wish we had a knuckleballer. That would be fun. I think knuckleballers are interesting because knuckleballs are so difficult for people to actually hit because they don't have any spin. Because like when you look at like a baseball and it like spins and you have certain things that you can pick up with it, when you throw a knuckleball like this and like allow it to release from your hand, it doesn't spin at all. And I always just loved that notion because sometimes hitters just don't like get it. Like, what are we going to do? And like, how do we hit this? It's just such an interesting thing because R.A. Dickey was one of the guys that did that, as Ryan Meridian mentions. He just had this such an interesting way of pitching that he could, he just had this interesting way of pitching where he could deceive people and just at the same time had some decent stuff where he could strike people out too. I mean, hey, I believe he won a Cy Young Award, R.A. Dickey. Let me just check. Yeah, he won a Cy Young Award and a Gold Glove. I mean, he's a really good player. It's just there's guys like that are very interesting. And knuckleballers can pitch for a very long time. It's very interesting to watch him. And I kind of want to go back and look at a couple of clips. It's just about trying to find a catcher that can take on those pitchers. That's the problem because not a lot of catchers can actually go with knuckleballers. And that's the biggest problem with them. There's been a few catchers that can, but sometimes they just can't. Let me just check the score. Millisecond. I mean, hey, we're doing pretty well right now. Conforto, I don't know how the hell that guy had a hit. Jesus. Okay. No, going well so far. It's going to be interesting to see how this offseason goes, gents. But yeah. I think what would be the one thing that we would all want? I think it's pretty obvious. Glenn and Eric will interview Major League veteran pitcher Stan Bonson this Sunday. He created his own pitch, the palm ball. Interesting. Well, ladies and gentlemen, go tune into Giant Sports Talk Live later. It'll be interesting. Oh yeah, tune into Will B stuff as well on Late Night Sports Talk. Tune into the Sharks tune into the Shark Show. Tune into Shark Bite because I'm trying to learn more about hockey as time goes on, and it's going to be interesting to see how that goes for me, so I can discuss it a little bit on this show. But yeah, Grand Admiral Shanahan, shortstop, replacing Snell and catching depth. This is something that we need this winter. Soto is the want. I agree. I think the essentials are obvious. Getting another starting pitcher is going to be important. We need to give Patrick Bailey another guy behind him. He's a good catcher, I think, and I think he's going to show improvement next year, but he does need just another person to help him out. I think shortstop is an obvious thing. That's going to be Willy Adames if we try and go get a shortstop. Let me just actually bring up the free agency list because I have it here. So looking at shortstop, we have Willy Adames, which is the very obvious one. Tim Anderson, bad. Miguel Rojas has a club option, so that'll be interesting to see if the Dodgers let him stay or go. Ahmed Rosario, Paul Young, Garrett Hampson, and Joey Wendell. The obvious best one there being Willy Adames. But yeah, feel like the Dodgers might snag Adames and they will trade for Lux for someone. That's definitely possible. I mean, the thing is, though, about the Dodgers' current state of money, I believe they're like a very deep over the salary cap right now, and they're trying to pay a lot of luxury tax. And I'm not sure how much they're currently paying their players, but they are going to be serious about trying to get Adames. But it's not going to be for like a lot of money. They might just put their name in the hat, but I do think that they will be interesting. Carter, special guest on a guest host on Jock and the Doc tomorrow morning. Can't wait to see you join the morning show, Carter. That'll be interesting. I definitely want to learn more about a lot of the things that we're going to be talking about. Definitely learning more about hockey. But yeah, Adames is the best shortstop in free agent Adames is the best shortstop free agent until 2031. I don't even count Jackson Holiday or Witt down the line because they will get locked up. Not a Bichette fan. I agree. Bichette has shown some good play in some moments, but this year has been awful for him. He's been injured, to be fair, and that's not unreasonable. But he is just not doing great. I'm actually going to pull some information up about Bo Bichette right now because you just reminded me. All right. I mean, yeah, he has been an average fielder. He has been horrible in pretty much everything from slugging to on-base percentage. Last year, he was much better. He was showing why he's a leadoff guy, and he was a good hitter. But I'm not very high on Bo Bichette either. I think that he's a good hitter. He's a good hitter. He's not a great fielder. And he's not a bad player, but the problem is I'm just not a guy who would be definitely staking my free agency money on going to get Bo Bichette. He's just not good enough in that way. If we were going to go try and risk everything or try and go take a shot at somebody else, it would definitely want to be a guy like Vladdy or a guy like Soto or a guy who's got more pedigree to his name. But then again, playing with trying to go get Vladdy would be an issue too, because getting Eldridge up soon within the next few years is going to be something that we worry about, because in reality, with the first base position, we're probably just going to get somebody who can be a temporary stopgap between 2025 and 2026, depending on when Eldridge is officially called up. But we will see there. But yeah, I actually might want to show you guys this, because this is just going to be something I kind of present. These are advanced stats, by the way, so don't get your mind boggled. These are just kind of this is just whatever stats. Okay, so these are Bo Bichette's stats from this year. So poor, average, and great, with poor, average, and great. And these are Bo Bichette's stats from last year. Look how much better that is. The massive gap you look at and how good he was this year in comparison to last year is honestly mind-boggling. Look at the batting average. Look at the slugging percentage. Look at how he was squaring up the ball and doing other things. His fielding obviously wasn't great, but it's whatever. Look at this year and the drop-off. Everything is in the blue, and that's not good. Just look at all of that. That's really bad in most ways. He's not whiffing or striking out too much, but he's not doing as well in batting average, expecting batting average, or everything else. Again, the guy's injured, and you can't exactly say, oh, he's horrible now. I mean, he's probably not a bad player, but it's just not good enough. It's not good enough, in my opinion. You would not want to be going out and trying to take a risk on a guy like Bichette when he's actually not playing that good. I mean, it's just not worth the risk, bottom line. But yeah, I mean, actually, I wanted another thing. They will trade Lux for someone. I don't know how well Lux has been playing this year. I'm actually going to check, because now that you've mentioned it, let's look at Gavin Lux's numbers. He's been average, basically. And the year before that, he had been average as well. He's basically kind of blah. I think that they will try and trade him this offseason. I don't think he is good enough for them. He's going to be a guy they put at second. They take away from second base. They're going to find someone better to play there. They're probably they're just going to supplement a lot of these positions with kind of blah players that are just good enough. Kiermaier's probably going to leave because he's retiring. Freddie Freeman is secure at first base. Third base has got Max Muncy. Behind the plate, you have Will Smith, not the actor. And then in right field, you have Mookie Betts and a couple other people. So they have their core in a good spot, but they're basically going to fill all of those other positions with just meh. In general, they're just going to fill it with kind of meh. They're not really going to fill it with anything too special. I do think they are going to take a shot at Adames, but I'm not sure if they have enough money for him because I'm not sure how deep over the luxury tax they are. But I don't know too much about the financing of that, but we will see how all that goes. We'll see how all that goes. Yeah. I mean, yeah, it's going to be an interesting offseason for the San Francisco Giants. It's either going to be heartbreak once again when we don't end up with what we want, or it's going to be an interesting offseason where we're looking towards the future. Again, I think what we're going to look at next year is going to be one of those seasons where we're just going to see what we got, because I don't want to hear from management and other people, oh, this is going to be a season where we're starting to compete again. No, it's not, because I think next season is going to be more of a season where we're just looking to see how good we can be. We're going to try and figure out how good we can be. And I think that that's going to be a season where we think more or less about the future of this team rather than what we have now. But that all depends on Juan Soto. If we get Juan Soto, which is a big if we get Juan Soto, then we are in a window of we're serious about winning. And we cannot be second fiddle to the Dodgers. We have to be right there, neck and neck with them every single time, because at this point, it's about trying to compete with the best of this, not just this division, but the conference. I mean, you look at the NL West. We're basically becoming the NL's version of the AL East. We have competitive teams everywhere that are going to be serious about trying to win. The Diamondbacks are serious about winning. The Padres are going to be serious about winning. I'm not sure about how the Padres are going to do next year, but they will be serious. The Dodgers are always serious. I think it's time for us to join the party. It's our time to be the serious team too. And I think that with all that being said, the first thing that has to happen before all of this ends up going the way it does, Farhan Zaidi has to be fired. Bottom line, if he is still around as this team tries to get back to its winning ways, then we will suck, because he is always going to be the anchor that holds us down. All of his decisions have been bad. There's no reason for me to believe that he should stay. I've looked at his body of work. He's made baffling signings. He's made bad decisions. He has led this team into the darkness without being proud. I mean, just look at how this team can go. We could really be a good team. It's just about trying to overcome him, and I think that we can. I think the biggest examples of him being bad were the Snell and Rodon situations where we could have traded them and we didn't. I mean, just look what happened. Moji says, Adames wouldn't be too hard to sign, but Bichette could be a plan B. Like what you said, we need Soto. I mean, Adames is going to be interesting because I don't know what agency he's also a part of, because he is a guy who's going to want money. I mean, he wants to secure his future. He's been a really good player for the Brewers and a good player for the Rays. He's going to be an interesting player that teams want to look at and say, let's go get him. And I know the Brewers aren't going to be spending too much money because their owners are kind of dirt cheap. Like one of those Brewers fans that came into Giant Sports Talk Live said. It's going to be interesting to see how all that goes. But I do genuinely think that if this is going to happen, we need to try and take a shot at some big name free agents. Adames is going to have to be one of them. And then we're going to have to go take a shot at Soto, because Soto is always going to be the main target. I mean, it's the Giants, the Mets, and the New York Yankees. All three of those teams are going to be serious about trying to get Soto. And I do think Soto may be able to be signed with us. Again, maybe this is foolish dreaming. Maybe this is BS. Maybe this is me being too hopeful. You might be right. Maybe you're right, but it's time to take a shot. Conforto off the books and trading for Robbie Railway for catching depth could pay for Adames. and that wouldn't affect bidding for Soto. Exactly. First things first, Michael Conforto is a bad big league baseball player. He's so bad. I watch him all the time on this team. His only freaking thing that he does well is whiffing on baseballs. He's terrible. He's not actually that good. I watch him all the time. The fact that he has more playing time than a lot of other players on this team is baffling. It's horrifying, honestly, how that guy plays in the outfield all the time. He's really bad and should not be given a shot playing DH, left field, or whatever. He's not good. Robbie Ray being traded away, I'd like to see where that could go. I'd like to talk to Boston or New York. Talking to Boston or New York would be a really interesting notion to me. Boston, New York, or Baltimore. All the AL East teams right now want starting pitching. Boston needs some guy to complement Tanner Houck. New York needs a guy that can complement Garrett Cole. And I think they actually have some good starting pitchers. But along with that, we really need to talk to Baltimore too, because I'm wondering if we can give them Robbie Ray and then steal away Corbin Burns. But yeah, and then going to get Adames would be really helpful. And catching depth would be nice because Patrick Bailey needs a little extra help. And then with bidding for Soto, it's always going to be interesting to see how business goes. Boston has Connor Wong, the perfect catcher to pair with Bailey. I agree. I think Connor Wong is actually much better than what people think he is. I think that he's a good hitter. I think that he's good enough to play the catching position. He's got decent pop time. I mean, we'll see. I think that he would be a guy that we could talk to if we tried to trade a guy like Robbie Ray to Boston. I think Robbie Ray is going to opt into his deal. Most of all, he's going to opt in because he's had a really mid-season ever since he came off Tommy John, and he really needs the money, if I'm being totally honest. So he's going to opt in, and then we talk to Boston, New York, and then we have a bidding war there because the thing is, Robbie Ray is still good enough to a point where they'll give a couple good prospects for him, and maybe even a good big leaguer like Connor Wong. So we'll see how that goes. Let me just check the Gamecast. How is that a ball? I mean, I think this is it, y'all. I think I'm going to just start winding this thing down. Anybody have anything else to ask or say or whatever or comment? Because I think I'm pretty much ready to go downstairs and kind of watch the game like y'all are too. How do you call number 4 a freaking ball? So insane. Who's the umpire for today, actually? I need to know. Oh, Libka? Really? All right, y'all. Thank you guys for watching and hanging around Carter's Corner here. It's always nice to talk with everybody here in this community. It's always great. And yeah, I'll see y'all tomorrow. Maybe we can talk about about a couple other things. Maybe there's some 49ers news. Maybe there's some more Giants news. But yeah, thank you guys. I think I'm going to go watch the game now. Thank you, Moji. Thank you, Grand Admiral. Thank you, Ryan. Thank you, Morkatna, and everybody else who kind of hung out with me and I was able to bounce some ideas off of. All right, y'all. See you later.
You've been watching the Northern California Sports and Entertainment Network, a Northern Lights Entertainment broadcasting station.